Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's welcome to another webinar hosted by Energy Safety Canada. My name is Arnold Betsema, and thank you for taking the time to join us. We have co-hosts Andy Davis and Mary Jo Spence in on the meeting with us as well too, and we have Pat Ferris will be speaking on the resetting mental health in the workplace. I'm just going to give a little bit of time for people to get registered in here. We just want to make sure that we get everybody in here. I think we had about 40 people signed up and we're about halfway there. So just a few things. There is a survey. I'm going to send her a coping scale, but we've got to wait till everybody gets in before I can send that information out to you. And we will go from there. So we just want to talk about this coping scale. But when we're looking at this, like I say, we're going to go through a couple things. If this is the first time you've participated in a Zoom meeting, I would suspect it probably isn't. Many of you, since we've been in this COVID issue, many of us have been attending many different webinars and using the Zoom format. But just to go over some typical things that we need to look at. If you want to interact with us, you should be able to go on the bottom of your screen and be able to hover up and bring up the chat room. The chat points, if you want to give us some feedback, we would certainly like to hear from you. And again, anytime during the meeting, you can type anything in there. And once Pat gets speaking, myself or one of the co-hosts will possibly take that time to talk with her and get her to do that. She can address any questions that we're talking about or any topics that we're talking about. And I think what I'm going to try to do is get this survey out to you here. And okay, so we are just going to put this in here. That's funny. I can't get that. Okay. My options here are a little bit off there, Andy, that it doesn't give me the chance to pull this in the chat now to give everybody, everybody in the waiting. Okay, never mind. Okay, I just have to find where I can get this chat. Oh, there we go. There we go. There's the chat. Well, we will get this coping scale out to you somehow. Once I get out of presenting mode, maybe I can get that chat information to you. Certainly, we would ask that you would mute, and you will be muted. We also ask that you possibly, if you have a very strange name so that we can see who's participating, if you could just change your name. There's a method to do that that should have instructed you to change your name so that we can see who is participating. As well, like I say, use the chat screens. We'd like to just get an idea of who's can receive everything right now. Give us a little bit of feedback. So you should be able to see, you can see that there's the yes and the no. So we could, if we get a bunch of yeses, if you could just click on that yes, if you can see where we're at, just make sure that you're get a little bit of feedback to make sure everybody's getting their video and their audio up to date. So I'm just going to take a minute and look at that. So if you could click on that, yeah, we got about 3 yeses there, 4, 5, 6, 7. So again, if you are having problems, use the chat room and let our hosts know that you are struggling with that. So, okay, let me see here. Oh, there we go. Now I got this. Okay, my computer, so I can send this. There we go. Okay, so in the chat room, you'll see the COVID coping scale has been sent to everyone. Take the time to open that up and go through that, and Pat's going to address that in a minute here as well too. Okay, so again, the presentation, if you can hear clearly, not hear clearly, but again, just keep giving us feedback and we'll be monitoring this information. So I'd like to take enough time for myself here and introduce Pat Ferris. Pat is the presenter, and she has provided mental health, trauma, and safety services to the oil and gas industry for over 30 years. She has a master's degree in clinical social work and a doctoral degree in industrial organizational psychology. Pat has presented in previous years at the Petroleum Safety Conference, and we have a webinar on our site that you can that is on demand that you could also review as well. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Pat. Just give her a second to get her screen loaded up, and she can move forward with the full presentation. Again, thanks everybody for coming. Excellent, Pat. Looks like your screen is up there from what I can see. There, we're ready to roll.
I'm unmuted. I think we're ready to roll. All this learning through COVID-19 has presented challenges. So I'm Pat. I'm with you here today. I want to talk today about, there's two aspects to here we are with our first, there we are. There's two aspects to resetting emotions in the workplace. First, I want to get a sense of how everybody's doing, because if you're like me, how I'm doing on any given day can change. It can go from feeling really bad and not functioning very well to feeling really good. And so as you complete the scale, I'd like to get just some general feedback about even if you can only complete the bottom part on the smiley faces. So I'll come to that in a minute. But I want to talk about what I'm observing. I'm a clinician and as well as a trainer and doing work in organizations. I want to talk about what I'm seeing with my clients in the organizations that I work with, and start off with being able to identify some of the emotional and psychological risks that COVID brings us. And then the second part, which I'll focus more on, is on how do we reset that? What can we do within an organizational setting that at least mitigates as much as we can the hazard of distressing and negative emotions in the workplace. So I think Arnold's going to be handling chat, so he'll get questions to me. I will leave time enough at the end of the session for us to have some discussion. So you've probably seen this a lot, but I'm going to ground you in this because I'm going to come back and use these 6 factors in mental health at the second part of the presentation to look at how, as an organization, you can mitigate risks there and how you can promote positive mental health. So mental health varies for all of us on any given day, and it's not an issue unless it's staying in a bad state. Clinically we look at for about 2 weeks. So to have a sense of mental health, we need a sense of purpose and accomplishment in our life. What's the meaning of it? And for many of us, or most of us, work is a really grounding part of purpose in life. So we need to be doing work that is meaningful to us and gives us a sense of reward and accomplishment. We need relationships in our life. And again, for many of us, those relationships come from work. And that's something that may have changed for a lot of people, in that we're working from home or we're working in isolated offices. We need to feel connected to others, meaning that not just that we have strong relationships, that we're part of a community, that we're part of a group that values and cares about us. So we need messages about, I'm connected with you. I care about how your day is going. I care about how your life is going. And again, the workplace is often one of the primary sources of that. And we need to have a good sense of self. That means self-esteem. And again, work plays a really significant role in that. And we gain self-esteem by promotions, by being praised, by having the skills to do good work and feeling like we're doing a good job. And again, in the COVID atmosphere, we've all had an intense learning curves around all sorts of virtual things, all sorts of medical and health things. That has really challenged our sense of self, or at least I know it's challenged mine. We need to be able to cope with stress, because life comes with stress and work comes with stress. And so what the workplace can provide is ways of dealing with stress, resources for dealing with stress, and we'll talk about what those are. And then we are a pleasure-seeking species. Fun, laughter, joy are incredibly important parts of our lives, and work needs to supply that as well. So how do you get your humor and whatnot from work? So what I'm seeing in people, though, is a sense of the sort of the current state, and we all may come to this place in bits and pieces. Some people may be on the positive side of things. I've got clients that said, hey, this was the best thing that happened to me. I got to be home with my kids. I was working at home anyways, felt really good. And I've seen the range of people from, it's overwhelmed me, it's too much, I can't cope. So there's a sense of COVID fatigue, and that's the load on the mind and the brain of all the decision making and things you have to remember. Take a mask, some stores want it, some stores don't. What's the protocol here? What's the protocol at work? Takes 3 times as long to do anything as, you know, go shopping, go order something. So many people are caught just on the load that just ever increases above the load of normal life, whereas others have seen this as a COVID reprieve. So how do we take away some of the fatiguing aspects, or how do we mitigate what most people will be feeling as fatigue and create a sense of reprieve? Many people come to me in fear and anxiety. They're worried, they have a heart condition, they have asthma, they're worried about their parents. So they're worried and anxious and what we call hypervigilant, always looking for cues that the world is going to blow up in front of them, versus people who feel in control. You know, okay, I'm doing okay. I know there's things that I need to do, but I'm generally coping. There's people that feel uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen with my job. I don't know what's going to happen with my position. Am I going to be at work? What's going to happen with a vaccine? Versus people who feel stable. I got my family around me. My job is okay. I'm going into an office. We're distancing. That feels good. We have a lot of people who are angry. I have some friends that are just, I don't care what the protocols are. I'm going to do what I feel like. This is nonsense. So you may hear that, you know, come to my party. I don't care about social distancing. And I'm like, well, okay, no, I won't be going to that one. Versus people that are, okay, it's here. There's things we have to do. It's impacted my life, but I know what to do about it. And again, those who are frustrated, angry, blowing up, having emotional moments, versus those who can ground themselves to say, yeah, I'm frustrated with this, but if I go in my garden, if I play with my kids, if I take my dog for a walk, I know that will ground me. And then we have people who can cope versus collapse. And I'm finding that people who have had a lot of stuff on their plate, people going through divorce, people with kids who are ill, people with parents who are in home, somebody who's lost, spouse has lost their job, are starting to move to the point of collapse. It's been just too much for them. And so that's created overload for most of us. So if people are not back at work yet, you may find that people may come back to work with lower levels of tolerance for frustration. You may find that people, even if they're coping pretty well, may be tired. There's a lot more to do. People may be fed up and just tired of the whole thing. They may be tired of all the changes, all the different challenges. I find a lot of people describe it to me as feeling discombobulated or feeling broken. You know, they pick themselves up and they go on, but there is this sense, and it's true and it's real. Life is different. Life is not the same. So your organization's efforts can help, and for many may make the most tremendous difference, and for some may not make enough difference, but there are certainly things that you can do, because when we're at this state of emotion and coping overload, it does result in a safety risk. And I just want to go over what I want to help you understand what a psychological safety risk really looks like. What's happening in your brain, the place that processes thoughts, feelings, decision makings, and how we act. What's going on in there, and what do we need to know about that? Okay, so just before we do that, and I don't know if there's any chat on this, but I've identified just from my work 4 coping types that I see from what I talked about, coping overload. There's a dismissive kind of coping, the people that go, oh, COVID, schmovid. My ex-brother-in-law is one of them. He just goes, what virus? And he just goes on about his life doing whatever he wants. And that may be okay in somebody's personal life, but it's really not okay at work. And for the COVID schmovid type, you really need to sit down and say, you've signed off on our policies. We're working hard to keep our policies as minimal as possible, but there are expectations that we expect everybody to meet around distancing, around hygiene, around how we work. So when you're at work, we expect you to follow the current rules and regulations. The anxious, fearful type is somebody who needs reassurance. So they're anxious if they're saying, have we done enough? I'm worried that I'm not safe. It's hard for me to come back. What if I bump into somebody? Because the reality here is, no matter, and I'm finding it as I go about my work in 2 different practices, as I go about my work and doing training, that as much as I try, or everybody tries, sometimes you bump into someone. So it's about discussing. We've got protocols in place. We've got sanitization in place. We have really great information on our website. If you have something that you're actually worried about, let me know and I'll make sure you get the right information. We've got the angry type, and this type tends to go around blowing off steam at everybody else. And this is the type that you may need to take aside and say, you know what, we need you to focus on the tasks and goals, that your anger is contagious. We'd like you to keep it to yourself, or come in and talk to me. Let's contain it and not contaminate the rest of the group with it. And then the last one is somebody who's relatively stable. So for that person, you keep awareness of supports going. So moving along from those coping types, you can see this is probably a very familiar slide to you, is that, the generally stable person who accepts that the pandemic is here, who accepts that life has changed, but also accepts that organizations, health authorities are doing their best, are likely not to commit unsafe acts. They're likely to pay attention, to not be so stressed that their brain is not working. So they rather go out of this, this diagram. But the ones that are likely to create unintended actions, your slips, your lapses, your mistakes, are the ones that are angry or anxious, fearful kinds of folks, because what's happening in their brain is the emotions are putting too much load on the brain and it's not processing information very well. So these are the kinds of people you need to keep an eye out. The violations are likely to be the COVID schmovid ones, or maybe the angry ones who just say, I'm not doing that. And I really hope and trust that you have very few of those types in your organization. And if you do, they are the kinds that need that pull aside safety talk, that need the monitoring, and need the support to behave in ways that are safe. So your brain on emotions. We need emotions. And in fact, emotions come up more than thinking. They're the first thing that comes up for human beings. So it's called the downstairs or the fast brain. So you can see the arrow pointing sort of into if this is your brain, into the middle part here, into your limbic system where emotions are generated. And so emotions come really quickly, and that's really good if we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or there's a blowout. But we need this part of our brain, the thinking part of the brain, to reappraise that first basic emotional response and come up with a reasoned judgment and a decision about how we act. But that brain is much slower. So when we're having a lot of emotions, the emotions can cause reduction in this processing. So emotions may come up, but the upstairs brain may take longer to come down and what we call regulate the downstairs brain. So the result of this may be simply that you see people having moments of frustration, moments of anger. You may see people having moments of tears. I think we've all been there. I found myself in some cases just I've had an outburst or I've cried and I've gone, what the heck was that about? And it's just I've been overloaded, too tired, and it's just been a moment. And I've been glad I've been in a safe thing, but it is something that you have to expect, and B, you have to know how to manage. So what happens out of all of that is that our human processing plant in here starts to be slower, doesn't have as much room for information to hold in what we call working memory. Working memory only holds about 4 to 7 bits of information, and we process billions of information. So the more you can see that we can't take a lot of chances in overloading the brain with difficult emotions. So it leads to, we don't perceive things. We don't even see them because we're not focusing on them. It results in an inability to attend to risks, or we get so focused on one thing that we can't focus on others. It gets very difficult to learn because it has to go through working memory, has to go through attention, and then it has to get back into the storage place in our brains. So this will be a time in terms of safety that you go over and over. Any basic learning that you want people to have, you go back, you do bits of it, ask people questions, do it again and again, because for most people, the learning capacity, the attention capacity is probably less. It also results in a depletion of willpower, not to do some of the things that we feel like doing, not to have that tantrum, not to kick something, not to do that, because our brain only runs on glucose. And when it's out of glucose, willpower, the decision making goes out the window. If you ever want to watch a funny video on that, there was research done on kids resisting eating a marshmallow. So Google the marshmallow experiments. And there's some 3 and 4 minute videos that shows really cute videos of kids trying to resist eating a marshmallow. I wish we had some time for that today because I'd love to show you, but we don't. So these are the safety risks from the psychological point of view that you need to be looking out for.
Just to intervene a little bit here, Pat, some of the things I've been thinking about too is, again, with our organization here at Energy Safety Canada, many of us are working from home or had been working from home, but the regional office, we are now working back in our workplace, 90% of the time. And I can kind of see the difference about some of the people. I mean, there are some people I know, some of my colleagues just love working from home, like MJ's on here and she loves working from home. But there's other people within the organization, you can sense that they're getting very frustrated being at home. But again, the perception, again, when you come back into the workplace, I think this last slide, the perception is really critical because everybody's been in a different environment, and so they're taking and processing it at a different pace. So I think it's really important of what you touched on there, that we all take that time to look and see where everybody's at. And some people are going to advance quickly and get back into the seat and do what they need to do, but others will not. So I thought I'd share that with you.
And for a multitude of reasons, we're humans, we're different, we have different things on our plate. The takeaway message from this is for your own selves and anybody that you're co-worker or anybody who's on there from energy companies that are, having people come on is we need to be aware of this. We need to be watching for it in and of ourselves, which is why I developed actually that COVID-19 coping scale. It's something quick and easy that you can give to people, that you can take yourself, that may increase your own attention and awareness to your state in a given day. And if you're finding over days and days, you're always circling the really frowny face, or you're getting really bad scores on the negative ones, you need to get some supports, and those need to be available. And that's, where I'm going with this, where I'm going to talk about shortly. But thanks for that, Arnold. And people can be safety risks at home. If you're frustrated and they're being at home, they still may have difficulty learning. They may be frustrated with technology. They may be frustrated and having, meltdowns at their family. And they may have slips, trips, and falls and lapses at home because they're not coping, or they may make poor decisions there, either about their work or about home. So, and the points I have up here, I'm finding, at least with clients and in companies where I'm doing work, these are very, very common experiences. So I don't want anybody to feel like you're crazy or nuts. If you're having some of this, it's part of the parcel of the pandemic, but it's also part of our health that we have to be really cognizant of. So I'm just gonna move along here. I thought we'd have some fun today. So in the first one, if somebody can, Arnold, do you want to take the test for people? Yeah, I guess Arnold can be your spokes, or Mary Jo, or anybody who's on here wants to speak. Are the lines wavy or straight?
They look wavy to me.
Yeah, well, they're straight.
Well, you don't know what I had for lunch, but no.
Yeah, okay. There you are. Your willpower's gone, right?
Yeah.
You did the bad no. All right. Which car's bigger?
Well, the one on the front looks way bigger than the other ones, but I think
Well,
they're
that's
about
fine.
the same size.
Yeah, they're all the same size. If you look at the box, can you see it shift? Can you see the perspective on the box shift?
Yes.
Okay. And the other one, can you see a cup or faces?
I can see the vase, but I can also see the faces when I look at it at a different angle. Yes.
I'm going to be really brave and try and show this video and get back into the slideshow. So bear with me. It's about 10 seconds, but just watch it carefully.
I'm not sure. Andy, is there any trick to showing the video? I guess we should have talked on this.
You can't see the video?
No.
Okay, then I'm back in the slideshow.
Okay.
If you can, it's a train that you're looking at, and all of a sudden the train changes direction. It's not the train changing direction, it's your brain changing direction. So the point of this slide was to have a bit of fun, but also to say at the best of times, our perception is not all that great. And so when you add a lot of other load to it, perception can really get messed up. Emotional perception and thinking perception and safety perception. Okay, so we'll just go through this part, but after we perceive something, it has to catch our attention. And so we have this system called the reticular activating system that filters things. So if our attention is on being worried, or our attention's on focused narrowly on, I gotta be safe, and I can only focus on this, that's gonna engage this system to push out everything else. And so at some point, that can become a safety risk. So what you wanna be looking at in yourself and others, are they able to shift their attention? Can they focus on the task at hand? Can I focus on the task at hand? Can I get out of that inner voice? And then I said the last one is willpower. We have a limited supply of that, and that depends on glucose. And when glucose is gone, decision-making goes. So some of the good stuff that you can actually do about this is have good snacks on hand for people. Yogurt milk sugars is a good one. If you're totally out of willpower, a chocolate bar or something sweet will help with the glucose to run your brain. But you need to watch for people being so fatigued that their willpower, the glucose is gone. And then the last one, as you all know, fatigue is, and I think for most of us, if we're honest, we're probably finding ourselves somewhat more fatigued than we usually have been. And that's a tremendous issue if you're working in any kind of a setting to perform well, but particularly in a safety sensitive position. You can see some of the notes there about the equivalence of drinking of a blood alcohol content. So there needs to be allowances for fatigue, that people can either go for a walk, that people could take a nap, or that maybe people can have some flexibility in hours if any of this is possible. Okay, so I want to talk about now, how do we set positive emotions out of that? Recognizing the risks, recognizing that there's a lot of things going on, and recognizing there's only so much an organization can do. But in my opinion, I think that there's quite a little bit that an organization can do. So going back, and we're going to go back through the 6 factors in mental health. And the first one was to create a sense of purpose. So it's about creating meaning in day-to-day work. So how do you do that? You do it from a business perspective. Hopefully the business leaders are saying, you know, our company is great. We love our company. We're focused on staying together. We're focused on working. The meaning for of it all is pulling together through this. We've had to make some changes. Everyone is valued. We can only meet our objectives if everybody's on board and working. And we appreciate the contribution that each and every one of you will make simply by doing your job. Remembering purpose, remembering all the good things that you've done, remembering what the company's done, remember the good things, remember the hard times we've come through, and we've come through that together. Let's create that purpose in coming through this healthy, well, not just financially and business-wise, but personally. So those are some of the chat that leaders in companies and safety personnel can have. Now, creating strong relationships with people working at home, people coming back in different states, and things being different at work has probably been a big challenge during COVID-19. I know I work with a group of colleagues in another practice, and they organized Friday, meetings to kind of connect. And at first they were good, but it then became too much. And now we're going to have our first get together in person this weekend. So the best you can do is the best you can do, but creating a relationship means showing compassion and empathy. So that means you need to talk to your coworkers, to your colleagues, to the people that you care for in your work, and you need to expect leaders to do the same. How are you doing? No, really, what's going on? How can I help? I've heard, or I know you've shared with me that you have some things going on. I've brought you some ideas of resources. I want you to just know that we care about you, and please come to us if there's anything we can do to help. Actually helping each other. So that may be doing somebody else's job. It may be giving somebody a lunch. It may be giving somebody an idea about resources, but actually doing something on that, an action that helps each other. So in terms of that, what can companies do? Can you set up where people walk, socially distance? Can you set up a board where people can say, I need this or that? I'd like you to think creatively about how you actually help each other.
We've got a couple comments in here. Okay. Maybe it seems appropriate now that we can maybe talk about these, maybe We have a question or a question here that was in the comments section. What are your thoughts on mask use and how either seeing people in masks as a sometimes frightening reminder of the threat or the personal feelings about mask comfort, reassurance, anger, how does that impact the mental health? I'm interested in how compulsory mask use can impact the workplace. Just wondering if, because it kind of like we're talking about reintegrating into the workplace again.
Well, first off, what we have to keep in mind is the information that companies are supplied from Alberta Health and the experts on the use of masks. Yes, seeing everybody in masks can induce some fear, but if that's part of what we have to do, that's part of what we have to do. And so we talk about it. You get funny masks. I've seen some hilarious masks as I've gone out. That can be one way of creating some humor. If you have to enforce mask use and you don't believe in it, it's still your job to enforce it. And so yes, for some people it might, but we work through that. We work through the fear, we work through the anger. No, we'd all rather not be wearing masks, but this is the best information that we have at this time. And that's a piece of this pandemic that is difficult for people and does create load because it changes.
Sure.
There's so much different ideas. And I was watching Global News this morning where the anchor really challenged the expert about, do we really have, who does it really protect? Do we really have to wear it? And the expert says this is the best information that we have at this time. So instead of being fearful, let's say, okay, so we have to do it. Can we turn this into some humor? I don't know if I've answered your question. I'm certainly not going to comment that I think masks are good or bad because that's not my area.
That's not, I guess everybody has their, and I mean, something for discussion. And then just there's two other comments that were kind of somewhat in alignment here. Thoughts on managing those people who don't want to return to the workplace, not for health reasons necessarily, but just personal preference, and those that are feeling anxiety or low mental health and they feel they need to be at home more than in the office. Just kind of how was some strategy on that?
So personal preference, my sister was one of them. She lives on a ranch and all she does, she catalogs equipment for for oil and gas companies through a company. And she just loved being at home, but they wanted her back in the office. And there was no flexibility on that. So, if you can have some flexibility, you may not, and that may be real as I'm sorry, we need you in there, or let's see what we can work with, do it. Because it may be new ways of working, it may save you. If you can't, you can't. So I think on the flexibility part, you really work with people on it and see what your company can do. It has to be procedurally fair. You can't just give it to one. If you're going to give it to one, you're going to have to consider about how you make it fair to everybody else. So always remember fairness in this. For people who are fearful, one of the things that I've got is a slide coming up is getting back on the horse, is that I think is very helpful to send information out before people come back about what the company's doing, the precautions they're taking, and asking people to identify any concerns before they come back so you can address them. And this has been a topic of great debate. There is a place where if your company has done all that it can do and followed all the health regulations and somebody still won't come back, you may need to refer them either for assessment or some counseling and really work with them on how they get back, because it does become a return to work issue at some point. So I encourage people to be compassionate, empathetic, work with them, but there may be a point where you need to take stronger actions.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you.
Can I move along?
For sure.
Okay, thanks. Those are great questions. Thanks, everybody out there. Well, we all want to see ourselves as that lion in the mirror. So to create a good sense of self, remember to express the value, thanking people for all their hard work, sending out emails to those people at home making a phone call. I am so appreciative of all the work and all the tolerance that you've had for all the changes. You know, that has made it easy for us to stay in business, and we really, really value this. You know, we've had a lot of successes. We've continued to be able to do our work. Um, you know, great. People don't need great big rewards, but what they need is that more constant, yay, you know, add a girl, add a boy, pat in the back. And you may all know this, but I think we underestimate the actual power of that. Just to say thank you, to say good job, to say I know it's been hard and I know you've had to put up with a lot. And we realize that and recognize that. And boy, when this thing is over, won't it be great to get together and celebrate? So you're visioning the future. Want to just imagine when we're all back together and we can have a laugh or do these things we used to. Isn't that going to be great? We're getting closer and closer. So we really look forward to that. And thank you for your cooperation on carrying on with the procedures that we're still going to have. So in terms of creating coping strategies, this is the area where I think organizations can do a lot. I would imagine most organizations have employee and family assistance programs. And this may be a time, if you can, to make it available or make something available to contracting companies who may not have it. But make it okay to have an emotional slip, trip, or spill. Is that don't overreact to that. You know, we're all going to have it at some point. If people are at work, make it okay to have a recovery area. Is there a place they can go for and sit outside? Is there a place they can go for a walk? Is there some comfortable place within the building where they can just go sit? I like to, you know, have companies have videos available, recordings. I used to take my, oh, I'm blocking on thing, my biofeedback equipment out to the field with me, and everybody, nobody's going to use that. But people would jump on it and do a 10-minute visualization and get the feedback from the biofeedback, and they loved it. So if you've got places where people can plug into that, do a breathing exercise, watch a mindful video, these are things that are going to help people recover, you know, a lot more quickly if than they would by trying to work through it. If you can get them to download apps and be okay to use the apps, such as Headspace, Relax Light, there's a whole bunch of apps that are free or very cheap that can put people through a 2-minute, a 5-minute visualization or breathing exercise that actually, if people do it, brings the whole system down actually pretty quickly. So somebody who's anxious, somebody who's being frustrated or angry can sit in one and do one of those and discharge those emotions fairly quickly. So physical activity, again, that ability to walk, get on a bike. If you have a bike or a treadmill that you can put somewhere and get on there for 5 or 10 minutes, it has a whole bunch of purposes that it meets. And keeping the door open for discussion, saying, hey, you know, it looks like you're having a rough day. You want to come in and just chat, I'll just listen. And sometimes that's all it takes. And for people who are really struggling, who may day after day be showing those signs, or, you know, or yourself, if you're filling out that scale and you're always the frowny face, that's the time to say, hey, I just need some extra support and help through this. And that will come very quickly from an employee assistance program, either virtually or even possibly in person. So I've talked about we're a fun-loving species. We are wired to have pleasure. And when we don't have pleasure, we get depressed. So one of the things that your organization really can do is create some humor. So I talked about maybe the masks can be a way of humor. Maybe there can be some funny, respectful signs, cartoons, sharing of funny stories about things you did or things you goofed up in the pandemic. I had worked at home so long. I was going to go into the office for a day. I was just starting to see people. And I got in my car and I went, oh gosh, boy, these shoes feel really comfortable, because I'd not put shoes on for a long time. And I looked down at my feet, and yep, the shoes were my fuzzy slippers. And I almost went into the office in them. So sharing those stories. If you can eat socially distanced together, safely, paper plates, disposable things, nourishing. There's nothing like sharing a meal to help. Um, Also, one of the things that a company can be really helpful with is having a well-vetted place of knowledge and knowledge sharing, resource sharing on your website, because there's just so much information going around that isn't good. So this will need to be vetted by a health professional, your occupational doctor or Alberta Health. But if there's a place that you can provide where people can go and share knowledge, and if you can give some flexibility of time and recovery, if there's some funny, I talked about spaces for exercise, spaces for putting on a headphones, listening to a 2 or 5 minute visualization, but you can also download some funny videos, or share them where people can go and take 5 minutes and watch or listen to a funny story. All of these, actually, there's nothing better than a belly laugh to bring blood pressure down and to ground people. So really simple but important resources to have. And so it's very important to be there for support, to listen with the idea that you're listening, to respond calmly and understand. I like the idea of creating opportunities to be heard. So a huddle, a morning huddle if you can, socially distanced with your funny masks on, tailgates, engaging with compassion, just saying, reflecting on what you've heard in terms of worries and concerns, making it okay to have a slip, staying away as much as you can from, well, the policy says that, da, 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 da. Now, certainly around things like masks, if that's your policy, then you may need to say that, but you don't say that at first. You listen, you empathize and say, I feel that, one of the most powerful things you can say is, I feel the same way at times, or I struggle with the same things. Here's some of the things that I do to cope with it. We really have to do this. I know it's hard. I totally appreciate that I'm going to have your cooperation to do that. And again, providing all the resources for support and help, information, counseling, support services. So we're getting near the end of it and just about ready for questions. So again, feeling connected. Do not forget about the people who are at home. And also, if you've got people on temporary layoff, make sure that you're sending them messages of, we're thinking of you, we're hoping and looking forward to the time you can come back. Just wanted to share what we're doing right now, where we're at with things. Be careful about how much you're connecting virtually, because that can create a load. So there's this balance between staying connected and overloading people, okay? And so toolbox, the in-face, the in-person, or the Zoom, if you're using Zooms, as much touch, as much as you can see people as possible. So I talked about getting back on the horse. So, before people come back, if you can provide details of the steps that are taken, if you can talk about the procedures, if you can ask people, if you need a place for people to send their, to know where their questions can be answered. Maybe it's you, maybe it's another website, maybe it's another agency, but letting them put and express their concerns in advance so that you can deal with them. This also helps their brain start to process information, rather than them just coming to work the first day and then trying to process it all. So being transparent about decisions that you've made and why. Okay, we're making masks mandatory because that's the best information we have from Alberta Health Services. We know it might be hard for some of you, or maybe all of it, but it's a decision we feel we need to do. We'll keep updating it as we get information. And again, the most asking for concerns, listening to the people, You don't have to have the solution right then and there. You can say, you know, I don't know what we can do about this, but I know where I can find information and I'm going to get an answer. So for safety leadership, it's not a time for tough love. It's a time to lead with some empathy, to provide some emotional support, and to remember that your own role modeling, the way you act and behave, sets the stage for how everybody else is going to behave. So if you come to work sick, that's what other people are going to do. If you're not following the rules, you're running around with your mask down to here, or you're running around hugging people, that's going to set the stage for other people to do that. And again, and part of role modeling, just practicing your own emotional regulation. So just want to go over that. Okay, so being aware of how you feel, and that's how that COVID-19 scale can help you and can help others. To have mindful awareness, to actually be testing reality. What is going on out in the external world that I need to cope with, and knowing the grounding techniques that calm you. Going for a walk, closing your eyes, imagining being in a place, talking to someone. Reappraising the first emotional reaction that you've got, using this part of the brain to manage the part of the brain that's inside there. Learning to be adaptable, and boy, we've all had to adapt a lot, and so we can. And having compassion towards yourself. If you have a moment where you don't behave well, you apologize, or if you're tired, you deal with it, but have some compassion around yourself. Okay, I'm tired, I need to deal with that. And be emotionally supportive of yourself. Okay, it's been rough. I need a day off, or I need to go sit in that chair, or I need to listen to that. CD. So if you're having a toolbox meeting, these are the things that I think that are important to discuss. This is a checklist and tool for you. That how are we doing with it? How are people feeling? I would give out this COVID-19 scale. You can ask people to just do it and keep it to themselves, or you can say, don't put your name on it, and hand them in so we get a sense of the general sense of doing. Share about yourself. You know, I've struggled with this and that, but this is how I'm addressing this. So, you guys aren't alone if you're feeling some difficulty. Asking people, can you identify some safety concerns? Talking about our expectation is, no matter how hard it is, that we all follow the policies and safety rules that are set around this, and it may change, as we all know, and that may mean some more adaptation for us, but we're all going to do it. And there's times that we're all likely to be fatigued. And let us know if you're in a safety sensitive position and feeling that fatigue, because we're going to help you deal with it. And it's going to be okay. There's not going to be repercussions for saying you're fatigued. So in terms of a checklist for or a tool for talking with management, as you share and talk with management, I hope that you'll be able to start to now identify to management what the safety risks are for emotional overload. To talk about the resources that should be available, website information, EAPs, how questions will be answered. Those are critical ones. Asking for management visibility and presence, toolboxes, walking around, emails, Zoom meetings, asking for them to be in it with you. To ask for timely, transparent communications, and to have management have an open door, and to have management really clarify how questions and concerns are going to be addressed. Is there a website? Is there a person? How do I, if I have a concern, make it known? And so just a summary is being informed and having reliable information to share with people. Getting people focusing on what they can control. Okay, you can focus on this aspect of your job for today. Giving lots of positive feedbacks, thanks, encouragement. For people who are having anxiety, take them for a walk, ground them, remind them of support. There's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can taste, and I've forgotten the last one, but just have them do that. Walk and let's look at nature. Stay connected, forgive the emotional slips and trips that are unintentional. The intentional ones really need to be dealt with quickly. Keep as much routine as you can for people and change to a minimum, despite the fact that things are likely to change and change and change until we get this thing under control. And keep the load minimal. You may have to reduce expectations on people and yourself. Start something to help each other or someone else. Start a charity, start a donation, do something. One of the most powerful antidepressants is helping someone else. And lastly, know when you or someone else needs help, okay? When you're seeing a lot of fatigue and exhaustion, when people are fearful most of the time, when they always are talking about resources and they always sort of, or most of the time, go into that frustration or anger response. If they're telling you they're not sleeping and that's kind of chronic, if you're suspecting substance abuse, if there's a lot of fighting or conflict amongst people, either virtually or in person, or if you just want some ideas. You know, counseling isn't always about there's a terrible problem. It can also be about generating ideas about supporting and helping people. And if you want your own personal, say, look at yourself and what growth you've had through this. So I'm trusting that all of you have these resources available because as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most significant mitigating risks, way of mitigating the psychological risks. And that's my story. If there's any questions, you've got my contact information up there and are certainly welcome if you'd like to contact me. But I think we have a bit of time for questions now.
Yep. Okay, Pat. Thank you very much, and great presentation. Lots of great tools there. I really liked the, you know, the looking after and showing compassion to yourself. I think one thing I like to talk to people about too is like you can't help people unless they are you help yourself first. Again, it's like my analogy is always like when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks have to drop down. You can't help anybody until you put yours on first, because if you're not able to really give them that information, then you can, you know, but if you can, you know, be the best person you can be to help that person, I think before. But again, we are going to be dealing with a lot of different emotions, a lot of different things. And I think there's some great tools there. So thank you. So yeah, so as far as the questions go, I've got one here from Corey. He said, is there a mechanism to provide a rating on the COVID coping scale?
Yeah, I've just developed that, so I haven't used it, but what you're asking me for is the scoring, I assume.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email them to Arnold, and maybe Arnold could, if you could email them out. But you'll see that there's the positive ones. So you've got 2 scales there. So you can add your scores up on the positive ones, and I'll just say those are 2, 3, 4. I can't even read my own writing. 2, 3. That's the negative ones. Positive is 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And so you've got a range of scores there from 0 to 28. So if you're getting 28, you're doing great. And for the negative ones, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, 13, 14. There should be 8 of them. So that gives you times 4, a range of 32. If you're getting 32, you're in trouble. Okay. So I would say to you that there needs to be more positive than negative. If your negative scale is always kind of really up over 50%, I'd be worried about that.
Yeah,
I would love
okay.
if you actually collect some data on this for me, and suggest changes, because I think it can be a helpful tool as we go forward.
Okay, well, we can see what we can do. I mean, yeah, I think when you read the questions, I think most people can determine which are the positive and the negative questions on that too, and then and score themselves accordingly. The surveys, just for the participants out there too, the surveys have been sent to you, our Survey Monkey. So we certainly would like you to answer that and give us the feedback, because it does help us to improve any further presentations, and to provide feedback to Pat as well too, if there's some things that they want more information on, or whatever we can do. So we certainly would appreciate that feedback as well. So certainly, you know, if you want to type in another, we got a couple, well, I guess we got about a minute left here but again, if you have a quick question, shoot it out there, and maybe we can keep Pat on the line for a minute. I know many of you
Yeah, I'm
have to
happy
take
to
off,
stay for a bit.
but I would imagine many of you are going to take off right away, but I mean, certainly we'll keep the meeting open for a little bit. And like I say, we have a couple of upcoming events here as well. We don't have a lot of webinars available, but we do have one tomorrow as well. There'll be another COVID-19 at work. If MJ might know more on that, she might want to speak up on that briefly. And then we have the potential serious incidents that's happening on July 29th. And I believe we're taking August off, and we will resume these webinars in the fall again too. So we're looking at our structure and we're going to review everything through August, and be hopefully have a more interesting product. I mean, or an improved product, I guess. I mean, so far, I think these have been a big success, and we've had a lot of great participation.
Sure, I'm gonna chime in there, Arnold. Tomorrow is going to be COVID at work. WCB is going to be our presenters. They're going to be talking about claims, how they go through them, how COVID makes a difference. And if anybody else has some questions about claim management through Alberta WCB, please join in.
Okay, Pat, I don't see any other questions coming up in the chat group on Zoom. We probably will we will probably conclude the meeting again. Once again, thank you. Great information. Like I say, this will be posted on our website. And so if you want to rewatch it and zoom through it and catch those slides that you kind of want to reevaluate again, they'll be there. They'll be available in a couple of days. So again, if you got more information, I mean, it's a struggle. We're getting out of this, and we're doing this all together, and all those wonderful catchphrases. But we are going to have to just sift through this together, and our industry is also taking a big hit. So there's a lot of stresses as well with that as well too. So maybe with that person that we work with, we might not come back to work, and what can we do and how do we deal with that? So there's a lot of challenges out there. So again, thank you all for attending.